Hello and welcome to the SwoleMates podcast. Your host for the evening, Jermaine and Derek, featuring special guest, Jack Richardson.
Woo!
Applause.
Emmett O'Leary.
Unreal. Now that's how you
That's
start
awesome.
a podcast. Very, very good. Yeah, thank you, Jack, for coming on this week. Super excited to have you on. This is the second guest we've had on so far, which is pretty fun. And obviously we got Derek as well. How was everyone's week? How are we doing, guys?
Not too shabby. Not too shabby. I've done a bit of training this week. Went to the gym, some weightlifting, and then I ate some food. And
Nice.
I did some sleeping, and yeah, that's my week.
Incredible stuff. I think I missed you. I didn't realize you came to Rov, didn't you? I'm
I
pretty
did, I did. So I spent a couple of days there. I just got a hotel. I recorded a potty with AJ, who apparently lives in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah,
uh,
he does, doesn't he? Yeah.
which is crazy. Like Uber to that place was fucking insane. And then what I didn't realize was like because he lives in the middle of nowhere, I got a hotel in Sheffield. He lives in Sheffield, right? The Uber was an hour to the hotel.
Fuck.
Jeez.
How was the
Like,
Uber an hour? Where?
I know, I
Yeah.
know. I'm sitting there. I'm like, right, cool, quick Uber to the hotel. I'm absolutely fucked, Been on trains all day, and Uber and shit, and it's like an hour. I'm like, what the fuck, man? How are you? Where is this place?
Wait,
Where
where?
the?
So, where was actually the hotel? Where was it in Chef?
It
Oh,
was
okay.
in the city.
Just in the city centre.
Yeah, pretty
It
much.
took an hour.
Jesus.
Yeah, yeah.
Jesus.
And then, yeah, that was like obscene. I was offended at that. And I walked into the hotel, they gave me two freshly baked cookies. And I was like, okay, I feel a bit better now.
Feel a bit better.
But
Yeah.
yeah, one of the reasons behind booking that hotel was they had like a jacuzzi and they had a swim,
Nice.
Oh, that's good.
and I forgot my shorts. That really pissed me off when I realized that.
Commander.
Yeah, just go commando, bro.
Yeah, I was tempted. I was tempted, but like the last time I did that, it didn't. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah. I
losing.
remember it well. Yeah.
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 You
How
remember what happened there?
Yeah.
we don't
Oh,
talk about
I feel about the great
Yeah,
incident
it. Yeah. The
of
the
the
great
flash.
the great jacuzzi
Mhm.
incident of 2023. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we remember it well. No, yeah, next time, bro, just fucking message me and you can crash at mine. That's way easier. Way easier.
Yeah, yeah, I'll do that, man. I'll do that.
Yeah.
I didn't, well, you don't think to do that. It was like, hey, bro, can I just crash at yours tonight?
Why? Let's normalize bros having sleepovers again, folks. Let's
Yeah,
normalize
yeah.
that. Bring
yeah,
that back. Bring that back.
fuck,
Um, yeah, I don't know how the Uber took an hour. That's insane.
yeah, that was silly, but the session was great. I haven't
Yeah,
been down that gym in a while. I took some photos in the urinals, which is great
the
because
classic. Yeah.
because
Classic. Yeah.
since I've moved, I used to take my photos in the gym and also at my flat, and I haven't been able to standardize photos or check-ins.
Mm,
So that was the cool thing about that was I was able to take some images there and go, right, cool. The last time I was here, I looked like this. And I was this way. And then,
yeah,
that's how you can sort of standardize progress. It's been a little bit tricky since
yeah,
moving to go
yeah.
from check-ins and I can do it on a weekly basis, don't get me wrong, but
Mm,
like, in comparison to the last off season, I haven't been able to do that.
Yeah.
If I've moved before, at least I've had the same gym I can standardize out of.
sure. Yeah. I think to be fair, next week I'm going to do this just before I go away to Japan. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to get in that urinal spot because I've not taken a picture there since end of prep 22 myself, and I train out of there, but like it's one of those things where up until the point I'm actually in a prep, I just don't. You just forget, forget that that's a thing a little bit because I'm like, well, there's no point comparing off-season look to end of prep look. It's just non-related. Like it doesn't
Yeah,
work.
and
So
it's the only gym where the spot is the urinals.
yeah.
That's good to like
Yeah.
that's the
It's like,
spot moves on. You
Oh,
know,
do you know what? The one thing that is weird about it is that's like everyone knows it as well, and it's to the point where I've gone in there and there's been like a female competitor in there before. I've had that happen
yeah,
before,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm just there like, oh, right, I'll
oh,
just stand
sorry.
here for a few minutes and
Oh,
wait for you
really?
guys to
I
wrap
was
up.
going for a piss, but my bad.
Hey, look, I'm all for the inclusivity, but it catches you off guard occasionally when you go in there, and it's like,
Well,
oh, all
I
right,
mean, I went there like 4 or 5 years ago, and then that happened. That's what I was like, I just want to pee.
mm,
yeah,
we need to
yeah.
get you down, Derek. We need to get you down for a session at some point.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Yeah, it's a fun gym. It's a fun gym. Yeah. What about you, Derek? What's been new in your week?
It's been busier because a lot of PT clients like just came back from China recently. Just work, work, work.
Yeah.
Training hasn't been like the best this week because like all the schedules kind of a little bit messed up, and but need a little bit break anyway. Next week we'll be
I
fully
hear
back
it.
on it.
I hear
Yeah.
it. You're still obviously pushing up. What's your body weight this week? Have we had another five
Um,
pound jump in
no,
a
no,
week?
it's just staying around at 99, 100-ish.
Nice.
Yeah.
Getting large.
Yes.
Meanwhile, for the first time in my life, I've fully become the skinny asshole now. I'm 90 kilo, and everyone else is. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm almost sub 200, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh fuck.
Holy
Everyone
shit.
else is pushing up. Because usually it feels like when I compete, most people I know are also competing that year. And then this is the
Mm.
year where I'm the one who's competing and no one else I don't think is competing. So it's gonna be interesting. I'm gonna be an emaciated man child and be posing down with people this year. It's gonna be fun.
It's
Yeah.
an interesting dynamic that is when, the people around you, if you're lucky enough to have like a circle of friends within bodybuilding and you're going through the same phase, that's a vibe,
Mm.
because you can all
Mm.
relate to either force feeding, feel like shit, or feel like death in a prep. The energy's low, and you're probably feeling, there's more intensity to the vibe, and you probably vibe on that. But when there's like this polar opposite, say
Yeah.
like you're training with each other and you're like your off season mate is like gassed as fuck, and then
Mm.
you're on prep, you're like, right, I'm ready to go. You're like, "Oof, just give me 5 minutes, I've just done a hack squat set." And you're like, I'm fucking ready, man. I'm ready.
Yeah.
It's a change, even in the mood and everything. It's a
Mm.
good one. But like I find, say, because people obviously there's bodybuilding couples, I find if that type of dynamic and the relationship of any kind sort of survives that, then it's a fucking pretty strong one, to be honest.
You know what? That's very much what I'm going through right now because obviously last time so obviously with my girlfriend Imi, when we started dating, it was in 2022. So we started dating when I was in prep. So the first 6 months of our relationship, I was being an kind of antisocial asshole, to be honest. I'm surprised she stuck around. And then we got to the end of my prep, and then it was like the honeymoon phase of our like relationship actually started a little bit. This time
Mm.
round, she's also prepping. So it's like a whole new ball game you have to navigate,
Yeah.
like figuring it out. Like me and her figured out we can't really train together. We're just not like as training partners. We just aren't compatible. We don't. I don't know what it is. It's just I think she psychs me out, and then I'll psych her out while we train, and it just doesn't mesh. It doesn't work. There's
Yeah.
like maybe if we train legs, it'll be okay, but we just don't. We just aren't compatible at the minute, and also she is way further along in her prep timeline as well. That's the thing. She's
Mm.
10 odd weeks out from her first timers show. So
But
she's gonna
she she competing before you.
yeah. So she's
Oh,
gonna
okay,
be
okay.
doing UK DFBA first timers, the Heart of England show. So yeah, she's way further along in the timeline than I am. I've got a trip as well where I'm going away. So there's just, imagine then if I was her actual training partner every single day, and then 10 weeks out, I disappear off for 3 weeks. That would be a massive, that would
Mm.
throw your dynamic massively. But yeah, no, it is interesting. You have to sort of go along and figure out what works and what doesn't, and how you navigate that. Um,
Because it stops. That's the crazy thing about bodybuilding is a normal relationship doesn't have that. It's like just a consistency. But with off season, I was sort of thinking about this the other day. Is you are like you a seasonal person where you have to flip a lot of your habits. For example, you're going to push up and you're aiming to, eat as much food as possible, and then you go through a dieting phase, and then you go from the lethargicism and comfort of the off season to this intense atmosphere of the prep where you're trying to dig and you're going into a different type of discomfort, and then
yeah.
your personality does change. You as a
Yeah,
person
yeah,
does
100%.
change.
Mm,
And that's crazy because obviously if you compete frequently, it's like, you're literally this sort of split personality for a part of the year. And this is why you've of course got to be in control of yourself. Because if you become an arsehole in prep, the people around you are just going to be, oh, I can't be, I don't want to deal with that. You go on prep, oh shit, whatever. When you're going into a relationship, that's obviously the test. And if you can keep surviving that, then you're pretty solid either way. Because
Yeah.
if you can survive like being comfortable and whatever, and then in the off season or just having that, God, like in the off season, I feel like I'm immobile and I can't do much and I can't actually get out the house much. In comparison to a prep where I'm more of an outdoorsy person because I'm walking all the time.
mm,
That it's just those little things that change your personality. It's like actually you're yeah, you're this different person from different parts of the year. And obviously food changes as well. Like in prep, I don't really necessarily get irritable. I just get
mm.
into a position where I become more quiet.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
in that camp.
same.
I just get
Yeah, I'm the
quiet.
same.
I think that's the best way to be, arguably. I think like
Yeah.
there's some people out there who I've seen in and around preps, and they're just nightmares, like just nightmare human beings,
Oh
completely
yeah.
flip on a dime, super irritable, like will just have outbursts, like come
Mm.
across almost as a bit immature, a little bit in
Oh,
conversation, things like that, you know?
I remember
Yeah,
when
yeah.
I remember when my friend I had a friend, right, he was prepping for the first time, and I'm like dancing in the gym. So having a good
That's
and he came up to me. He was like, "You shouldn't do that. You're using too much neat."
Oh,
I was
fuck
like,
off. Dickhead.
"That's exactly what I was thinking." I was like, "That's outrageous. I can't believe you just said that. That's so fucking outrageous." And like afterwards, he just laughed at it. I
Yeah.
was like, "Yeah, you deserve to be punched in the face for that shit." Just
I
having
think,
that
yeah.
that reaction to shit. Like when you're on prep, I think it's just recognizing that obviously it's a choice. You've chosen it.
Mm,
And
Yeah.
also most of the time, if you're irritable about something, you've got to de-escalate
yeah.
and also recognize it's probably due to the fact that you're just hungry. It's not a world-ending thing that everyone around you is conspiring against you and
Mm.
trying to piss you off and trying to get in your way. It's just you're probably just fucking hungry, mate, and you just need to chill the fuck out and deal with that internally, not fucking blah.
Except, yeah. Do you
Yeah.
know what? I also think because I have to have this conversation. Obviously, me and Amy have this conversation quite frequently. Again, it's the whole thing of stop, take a second. It's a choice. You wanted to do this because you wanted to do it for the challenge, right, or whatever. You're doing it, I think, for the right reasons, but just remember that you're doing it because you chose to do it. And also, as well, see
Yeah,
it
that's what I tell
like
myself at then.
Yeah, I think a lot of people as well don't
Mhm.
see it for they don't see it for what it can be as well as a positive. Like going through a prep phase of like it essentially as kind of sort of cringe, and I don't want to come across as it being like some sort of weird fucking macho Sigma male bullshit thing, but see it as character building a little bit. Like,
It is
yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
you've got to see it as like an opportunity to grow and sort of see how you are under pressure and things like that, and also get good at handling relationships under pressure. Because like think about like in the past, right? I don't know how many people you know in like COVID, right, where people's lives hit the fan and relationships fell apart over the course of 6 months. The amount of people I knew who broke up, moved out, all that sort of shit in that time frame, because arguably they hadn't had an actual sort of test in their lives or relationships, and then it happened, and everything fell apart overnight.
That was yeah, that's pretty much what I was alluding to earlier is like you're under this test of your dynamic with with the other person, but also with yourself as well. It's like with my prep, like the way I see it is it's not just a process of getting on stage. This is an opportunity for me to level up. Each time I prep, you know, am I able to handle my emotions no matter how intense they get,
Mm,
how irritable I may get? Am I able to just control them? And there's an element of stoicism that is forced upon you through that process because you have to. You essentially your body's just screaming at you, saying, "I really don't like what the fuck you're doing," and you've just got to go the opposite direction and
Yeah.
also be consistent because obviously with what we're doing as jobs, coaching people or whatever, like we've still got to show up and we can't just be all fucking preppy for these people because they're dependent on us. And it's
mm,
it's like that ability to be consistent in that way for the people around us and also to still do the hard shit and balance yourself in that way
Mhm.
where you could go to that level of intensity
mm.
and so again not be a cunt not turn into a cunt with that level of intensity. It's that is character building. Anything
Yeah,
that is hard that you're putting yourself through um with a positive for a positive cause is going to build your character, and this is why I love bodybuilding because well, it's a discipline, and obviously you could get this from other disciplines, but there is great crossover in life. You
mm,
can be uh it teaches you many things, but one of the big things it teaches you is to be a balanced individual.
100%. I don't,
Yeah.
obviously, Derek, you could chime in on this potentially, but I know for
Mhm.
myself, when I do a contest prep, those are my most productive years of my life so far. So, like the
Yeah,
first
I
time I
felt
did a
that as well.
contest prep, I was at university. I was working like near a full-time hours studying, and I was prepping. The second time, and that was when I was 19. Second time, um, I'd started a new job. I just started pushing my feet into coaching a little bit, and I then also went through and got my first home. Like I bought a property in that time as well, like sorted out mortgages and all that sort of crazy crap that like a lot of people would feel like almost they can't do, or like it would take too long, or it's just not worth the hassle in a prep. I think it's important you go through and actively try and do something,
Mhm.
especially while dieting, because you typically are higher energy as well, in my opinion, especially for the first stint of a diet.
Yeah.
I think
I
that's true, man.
feel like when you are going through a prep, you're in the mindset of okay, ticking boxes, kind of okay, do things, just keep doing, keep doing, keep going. Just anything in your lives, like if you as soon as you have some free time, okay, I'll do something more productive.
Mm,
It's just like in that mindset, lock the fuck in, just keep smashing
yeah, I hear that. I hear that.
it.
What, out of curiosity, what sort of like big things goals wise have you guys got sort of ticked off in sort of your current phase or prep or whatever more recently?
So, for myself, like obviously, again, I do agree with the sentiment of prep. When I think back on the preps that I've had, my life has changed drastically. And because I've usually typically had long off seasons, it's like the years in between have been a blur.
Mm,
As- And then the actual prep, it's like that year has been a big switch up,
mm,
and like a big character switch up as well, because I'm putting a lot more things in motion, and potentially those things, both within bodybuilding and outside of bodybuilding, was set up within those years that seemed like a blur.
mm.
Then I've been able to just execute, and that's the type of energy that I want to actually still hold on to in the off season. I think one of the ways that I'm doing that is not trying to be as aggressive and excessive with the off season to the point where I'm like, okay, I have to sit and eat food all day and I'm going to feel like shit,
Mm.
because I think there is the correlation of being hungry and being proactive. I think as people were actually meant to be hungry, I think that is what's going to help us keep us ambitious. But one of those things as well is I've been cutting out cheap dopamine. I'm trying to get my dopamine from the
I've seen
process.
this a lot. Yeah, I've seen this
Yeah,
a lot
so you
lately.
posted. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, so this is why I'm like, okay, cool. So what I'm trying to understand my own mind and how it's working, like what makes me so productive in a prep. And dopamine is going to be a big part of this. And if I'm sort of, because I used to smoke weed on a daily basis in the evenings, and I would vape heavily, which is a thing that just terrible thing. Like
Yeah.
no one should vape, man. Um, but all these things are going to take away from your ambition, your ability to be motivated to go and fucking go out there and fucking hunt and kill the goals that you've got, that type of shit. So I'm trying to get rid of that, and I'm like, cool. Now, the only ways I want to get my dopamine is from productive shit with my career or bodybuilding. And last year it went well. It went well. I did what I needed to do. I'm like, cool. I need to replicate that in the off season, and I'm not going to use because, as you said, people would use prep as an excuse, and I'm not going to use the off season as an excuse to be off in my intent with my trajectory in life within
Yeah.
and outside of bodybuilding. So I want to, I'm like, right, okay, I want this out of business, want this, that, the other. That's going to come up. I'm not just solely going to be a bodybuilder eating and just doing check-ins. I'm not just to do that. I'm going to do a bunch of shit like I would do in a prep where I'm keeping myself busy. I'm going to find out how. And like I say, I want to do a bunch of shit. Big focus on content creation and big focus on. Well, again, I want to compete this year for those reasons, and I think for me now, I want to start competing on a yearly basis.
Mm.
So have those years on in a row, and I think the off season is now coming to a point where that's probably more unproductive to do and hold on to, and it's at a point where it's probably more unhealthy. Like me being at 270 pounds, 260, whatever,
Yeah.
it's a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
So if I can cut and sort of rebound out of that, there's going to be less stress in the body. So I feel like I'm just going to keep throwing myself at the goal of trying to qualify for the Olympia until I get there.
Hmm.
And then in the meantime, just do whatever the fuck I can to fast track that.
That is such a interesting mindset. I do wonder for you now, Jack, do you feel like because you are a pro, you essentially have made it to the start line of the big race, right? To the top.
Yeah.
Um, do you feel like you are on like you have a certain amount of time? Do you feel like a time pressure in your career, or is it just a case of just actively being engaged with the process and enjoying it as you go?
I do feel like there is time pressure, but I do feel like that's self-inflicted,
Yeah.
uh, but intentionally. Like I like that
Mm.
because I'm looking at each session as a very limited opportunity, each day as a limited opportunity to improve. I'm like, oh my God, okay, if I fuck this day up, that's a day wasted. and I'll try to make this goal as extreme in my head so it sounds fucking dramatic, you know? So it's like, okay, if I fuck this day up, then I'm fucking a, an opportunity to get closer to the Olympia stage, you know? But that's not been there since I turned pro. That's been there for a while. It's like
Yeah.
when I was amateur, I was like, okay, this is going to take away from my ability to become a pro.
Yeah.
If I'm like, if I'm sort of like docile in this, not present with this phase within my training, and if I just go through the motions, I'm really going to take away from the goal that I have. And at the moment, like it's leveled up, and I feel like since I've obviously entered the pro league, yeah, I'm definitely acknowledge that I'm at the bottom of the barrel again, which is
Mm.
like fucking prestige on COD, you know. Yeah, you just like starting again, and I'm like, cool. Now, for me to win a show, again, I like to put things in a very scary perspective because I like it, you know, as the mustache guy says, pressure is a privilege.
Mm.
Yes,
Uh, if I tell myself like to win a show, I have to be one of the best bodybuilders in the world. No,
Yeah.
I've got to apply myself as such, and I've also got to apply myself with that mindset for success in life. So that's really um again, it's a matter of perspective. I could have just entered this and gone, right, everything's the same. But I'm like, no, this is going to use this as an opportunity to almost scare the shit out of myself, to hold myself accountable to um, being a much better person in all regards, to holding myself to a more professional standard in all
Mm.
bodybuilding, in regards to how I conduct myself in every part of my life, so that I could make these things come into fruition as soon as possible. Because the sooner I make those things into come into fruition, the sooner I could get started on the next steps and the next goal.
I hear that. That makes sense. Derek, are you? Because obviously, Derek, you're obviously still amateur, but like as we've just as Jack just said, like bodybuilding is arguably the main sport where you have to be a pro before you're a pro, as it were, right?
yeah.
Where's your headspace at with that at the minute?
I, I basically they're quite similar. Like literally every time I go in now, go into training, just I before maybe okay, maybe just have a set goal in terms of like, okay, what I kind of want to achieve. But now it's like maybe in my head, every time I just look at myself in the mirror or just step into a set, I just think about okay, uh, the final goal is still going to be the Olympia someday. Just basically keep thinking about that. Okay, if if I do one less rep that I was able to do, then probably I'm missing out a lot.
Mm,
Like every single time, just like push myself to the absolute limit.
I hear
Um,
that.
and yeah, similarly, like applying same thing to the rest of my life. In terms of like right now, I'm trying to focus a bit more on like creating content as well, especially when it comes to like posing coaching side of things.
Yeah.
Just really want to like make myself like push myself out there to be like one of the best out there as a posing coach. Yeah.
Which I'm confident you will be, Riff. I'm
Thank you,
confident you
man.
will.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, yeah, I think I'm in a similar boat. One thing that I've noticed, and this is part of it, is like you have to recognize habits, right? And what are good
Mm.
habits and bad habits. One habit I noticed for myself is when I diet, I get absorbed into the process to the exclusion of everything else.
Yeah.
And that's something that actively I think it's gotten better each time, but actively I'm working on this time is can I continue life and make sure every aspect of life moves forward in a reasonable, timely way, while also, over exceeding at a goal, and that's a
That's
big
fine.
ask, but yeah, it's about finding that because a lot of people have it like, and I used to be of the opinion, I don't know if you guys still are. I used to be of the opinion when I got into bodybuilding that it is 100% or nothing. You cannot compartmentalize. You have to stick everything on black, as it were, while in the prep. And I think now, however many years deep I am, I've gone, oh shit, yeah, no, life carries on. You still got to tick all these other big boxes and other goals. Like your goals can't be entirely based around the reps and sets and sleep and steps. Like you gotta be have more to it, right?
Absolutely, because
So,
I think this is a couple of ways to think about this. So initially, when you start bodybuilding, it's new, and this is a new skill that you're trying to learn, and you need to be more conscious of learning that skill. So there's going to be a more conscious effort of trying to tick those boxes, which is going to require pretty much most or if not all your energy to do that. But once you become efficient at that, then you can take a step back and go, okay, um, this is now sort of carrying itself. It's now turning into a habit. It's now routine. I've
Mm.
learned that skill. I can now apply this in other areas. As well as this, it's worth just acknowledging as well. There's only, once we all wanted to tick the boxes, be consistent, and it is a lifestyle. There is only so many boxes that we could tick, and and we want to smash the fuck out of ticking the boxes for sure. But if we then just focus on it more than we need to, we're actually going to be taken away from the goal, but also other areas of our life. And off the back of that, you're going to find yourself, I don't know, at the end of a prep, and you may be thinking, fuck, my life's been quite stale. And you might actually be like, shit, my life's shit outside of bodybuilding. I'm
Mm.
now feel more obliged to give more to bodybuilding because I've worked on my life. So
Yeah.
you run away from life because you've not done anything in life and you're just giving more to bodybuilding. And you don't want to finish a prep and go, fuck, your relationships and with people have been burnt down and, your career's gone to shit. You want to try to balance that.
Yeah.
Um,
mhm.
Additionally, as well, you want to, uh, I mean, it's worth acknowledging the fact that, well, I people who I've spoken to, no matter, how where they are at in bodybuilding, when they've been able to be more balanced outside of it, they can do bodybuilding better. And I remember actually speaking to William Bonac about this,
Mm.
and said, uh, he was like, when I was just prepping and I would just stuck in my house and just ate my meals and just went to the gym and did nothing else. That was I didn't get as good results as when I prepped and then did things outside of bodybuilding as well. For downtime as well, not just for personal progression. He found that the prep itself was a lot easier and also the results were better. It makes sense because you're not going to be so bound up and stressed and with such high cortisol or over just overthinking the process.
Mm.
Be able to actually be pulled back down to you got to be grounded a little bit, pulled back down to reality, and be able to have a smoother time, which is going to play a role in actually being able to manage stress and manage your recovery and feel better throughout this. So it's a win-win-win. But it's hard to get to.
Yeah.
And it's got to keep yourself accountable to it and go, am I losing myself in this more than I should do?
Mm.
And that's individual for each person.
Mm.
Balance is individual.
Yeah. Fucking A, man. I love how this conversation quickly devolved from how's your week going into like some really in-depth shit, which is good. I think it's good. Like I think a lot of people need to hear it, and it feels current almost more current than it has done
Mm,
previously for myself. That's for sure. I think it's yeah. There's a lot more like I know it sounds daft, but I feel like a lot of people have it in their head, especially in bodybuilding, that you're sort of a man of action or a woman of action, like you're doing stuff and you're ticking boxes and you become robotic. Whereas in actuality, you need more time to think, I think, as well. Like you need to actually give yourself back that time and actually think through the process. And a big question I always ask this to like clients or people who come to me asking about bodybuilding who are curious. Like I had two clients who I trained with the other day who came to visit from Nottingham, and they were just asking about the process because they're just lifestyle clients. They're not, they're not bodybuilders. They're just wanting to get in good shape. They've got other careers, doctors, whatever. Um, and I was like, this is not a process where you just do it for the shits and giggles. Like you do it because you actually have thought about it. You have to have done the forethought and thought about, is this right for me? And have a really strong sense of why, and also when and where and how you're going to do it. Because I think a lot of people just the amount of people I know have burnt out, like who were there when I started, like when me and Jack were like stepping on stage years and years ago, when we first met, who are no longer who haven't stepped on stage since, or people just get lost in it a little bit. I think they get
I
lost along the way.
craziest thing happened now that you mentioned.
Mm.
So this guy messages me and he sends me a photo. He's like, "Is that you on the right here?" And he sends me a photo of my first ever competition when I'm 18.
Yeah.
Yes. How did you get this photo? And he was like, "Well, I'm the guy right next to you." I'm like, "What?"
What? Yeah.
It's been
Whoa.
9 years. I've never not spoken to him since that day. And then we're reflecting and we're like, yeah, who's left from that season? And I'm thinking, even from different classes, from the juniors, from, the bodybuilder, who's still competing? It was hard to name people. I'm like, fuck me, we're pretty much the only ones left from that. How crazy, you know?
Yeah.
And that's one way to think about it. I suppose it's like consistency, obviously, big part of bodybuilding. But if there were people obviously genetically very, very gifted, as there always are within like the British finals and
Yeah.
whatever. But if you stick around longer, you're gonna obviously beat them. You're
Yeah.
gonna just exceed them. Or if you're just obviously it's supposed to depend if bodybuilding's not a hobby or if it's a lifestyle, if it's career, that's completely up to the individual and what they want out of life. But, you can literally uh, be more consistent than these people. If you are able to balance yourself, like we're saying, and not burn out, as you said, then you will have a better chance of doing that. What was the same?
Yeah, you were just a little pause, folks. We're back. You were saying, God, what were you saying in regards
People,
to?
yeah.
Yeah, Derek probably remembers better than I
Right.
do.
Well, people who were competing with you back in the days no longer compete
Yes.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then, yeah,
yeah. So essentially, it's just trying to get to that point where you can keep yourself, if this is something that you truly want, obviously to achieve anything great, unless you're like this wildly genetically gifted person, you're gonna have to bleed time for this. And to keep yourself locked in for a long period of time, you've got to not burn out and obviously keep the passion for it. As soon as the passion goes, you won't last long because it's brutal. It's a brutal process, and I feel sorry for anyone who's doing this and doesn't love the process of it because trying to explain what we're doing to people who aren't in this and they're like, "Oh, I enjoy, dieting until my fucking skull is on show, and I enjoy force feeding myself to the point where I can't tie my shoelaces. That's great. I love, squatting until I feel like I could shit myself. I can't walk. Like they're like, what the fuck? It's hard. It's passion. You can't explain passion.
Yeah.
But that's like, that's going to be applicable to different things like stamp collecting. I'm not going to understand that, but people are passionate about it, and I'm sure, like when they're in it, you can probably understand it. You
Mm.
know, I'm always empathize with passion, And that brings me to the point of like, you keep that there. If you lose that, then that's fucked. That you
Yeah.
no longer you you can't lock yourself in. You know, I'm not saying you have to be motivated all the time, but there's got to be an element of passion to sustain discipline within this. And yeah, if you're like, I'm going on to my 12th year of training, and I've been pretty much bodybuilding since the start. So I'm wanted to continue this. You know, I feel like I've just started with the new endeavors that I've got. Like I say, I feel like I'm at the bottom of the barrel. I'm climbing back up now.
Mm.
Um, so I've really, really got to keep my passion alive. And if I was to approach it like I did at the very beginning, where it was bodybuilding or nothing, and nothing else, then I'm going to really struggle to do another 10 years, which most likely is going to be the case. You know, it's going to be roughly another 10 years
Yeah.
um, that I'm going to be spending within this. So, and it's crazy to look back if you've done this for a while already, to look back at the earlier seasons that you've done, the initial ones, and actually think about how many people have lasted. It doesn't matter where they placed or how genetically gifted they are. If you've outlasted them, then you're currently doing better as a competitor, of course, because you're still competing. And most likely your physique would have developed past those people. So there's a couple of things that don't worry about where you've placed in one particular season. And don't obviously compare to other people because it's irrelevant. Because who knows, they may fucking drop off and stop this thing altogether.
Yeah.
You know, so thinking, oh, I'll never be able to beat this person, or this person's always going to be better. Like you don't know. Like if you can sustain passion within all phases longer, then you outlive them.
That
And
is such a funny way to think about it. That like, yeah, bodybuilding is like a survivor's sport. Like,
Yeah.
there's not many like when you think of like football or gymnastics or figure skating, which is actually pretty good comparison because it's not like an actual performance metric sport. It's judged, like by a panel of judges. It's interesting how those have very set sort of periods of competitive sort of time in the sport, whereas we're sort of a weird space where the top competitors are the people who've just been doing it longer than everyone, and some of them are like, if you get to 50 years old, like Dexter Jackson, for example, look at his history, like how long he was competing for, and then he ended up being the most winningest pro of all time, or whatever, right? As a result of that. And yeah, it's really interesting that that survivor syndrome of like the idea is that you just need to keep enjoying the process
yeah,
and find a way to stay in it that way,
yeah,
Yeah.
for as long as you can, for
yeah.
sure.
It's a long-term sport. This is why they call it an old man sport because it's like you've got to it takes time. You've got to accumulate muscle. That takes time. And the longer you can stay in this, the more likely you're going to be able to be successful. Yeah, genetics play a role, but also the ability to do that and outlive people within the sport is what's going to help you supersede.
For sure. I mean, that bodes well for me. I've not won a show yet, so fingers crossed we'll change that this year. But the reason I am, like you say, still in it is because I just love this shit. I love it so much. Like I even when like I had a wobble a couple of years ago where it was when I'd like pulled my back out twice in like a span of 3 months. So I was rehabbing that, and obviously there was very little I could do training wise. At that stint of time, I couldn't train hard, heavy, full send like I normally want to. And I had a sit back. I think I had a chat with might have been JKC, Jack Kinsey Club, and we were yeah. I think I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about like where do I go with bodybuilding? And he was like, well, you could have a break, like go back to something. Like, at the end of the day, he was just saying chase enjoyment. And then I sat back and I went, shit, what do I enjoy doing? I did martial arts for like 7, 8 years before bodybuilding. I was like, oh, fuck, maybe I should go back to contact sport. Nah, I'm not feeling it. I played rugby for like a very short stint, and then I watched all my friends get absolutely totaled, just like messed up hips and knees and stuff. I was like, yeah, no. And then by the end of it, I was just like, I was just itching. Like I had just this itch. I was like, I just need to scratch this itch. Like I was like, I wanted to train. It wasn't even just I wanted to compete. It was I just want to train. I want to be able to train and go through that process. I just want to get back into the process. And
Yeah.
that's the moment I sort of like really I think knew, and probably the last time I think I'll ever have a wobble like that or a thought process like that of like, do I really want this?
They happen, man. They happen because again, this is a long, monotonous process,
Yeah.
and you're gonna be. But it's that what you described right there is how you could distinguish if you actually want this. Because when you are thinking about the alternatives, no matter if you're not motivated, you're at the low point and you're thinking about quitting, all the alternatives suck in comparison. If they all suck, and when you're at the least motivated for this process, then that passion's still there because you're like, I nothing is as good as this. I'm thinking about the glamour of all these things, and it does not compare to the suckiest part of this process.
Mm.
And that is how you can tell. Because I'm saying this because I went through the same thing. I like 23, I had my shoulder injury, and I've still got it. No, it's a torn labrum. And I remember pushing up for a while, and again, I'm like, oh, I haven't had a good season in a long time, and this is hard. This is a lot. This is very demanding. I'm sacrificing so much, and you can't guarantee the payoff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is this worth it? That crushes your mind. Is this worth it? And again, you go through the alternatives, you're like, they don't seem more appealing.
Hmm.
For that reason, yeah, it's worth hanging on. And again, because I hung on for that little bit longer, I felt like the payoff was all in one go,
Yeah.
as a result of just hanging on past that dip and motivation for that. And that is, again, just surviving long enough.
Yeah. Crazy. It's crazy to think about. Derek, have you had like a similar thought process before? Have you gone through that?
Mm, not really, but I kind of had like people around me like doubting like is this gonna work, especially my parents. Like Asian parents, well, I think most Asian family don't really look up on like sports,
Mm.
and then let alone like bodybuilding is like even more of a niche. And
Mm.
then like in the past few years, like even I've won like one show, my parents still like, is this going to work out? Like they keep saying that every single week I call them is sometimes it does make me doubt myself a little bit, but it's just like still like Jack said, like the passion that you have like really keeps you going.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it's like every time I doubt myself, I kind of okay, let me think back a little bit. Why did I start doing this? Why did I believe in myself in the first place? And rather than just only listening to like all the doubt that people give me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think parents are a funny one, man. Like,
Yeah.
I know for myself, it took me sort of a while to convince my mum that I was, well, initially not homosexual, actually, I think. And then after that, it was like, okay, is this really going to go anywhere? Like, is this actually going to, in this, but, and it's, I ended up having like multiple conversations. I think a lot of it comes down to seeing it as, again, just like fucking like getting a degree or going and doing a doctorate or whatever, right? Anything that's worth doing is a time investment, and it takes years to get a PhD. It takes 10 years, basically. Like why do people think it would be any different, right, for something like this? And and even for myself, like I'm blessed to be in a position where I've managed to build somewhat of a career out of bodybuilding already, even though I'm still a toddler in bodybuilding years, to be honest. But it's still a thing of like, what is the end payoff? And it's constantly trying to convince the people around you that it is worth doing. And the reason it's worth doing is because one, it actually makes you feel fulfilled and happy and makes you feel at peace and all those sort of good things. And it makes you a better person along the way, which I think my mum has now seen. And obviously, you get into the whole conversation of like, you're not going to do steroids, are you? And all that shit, right? Everyone, of course, you have those sort of conversations. Like I've had those multiple times over the past year. I even had it recently with a client. He's like a younger client. He's like 19. He's looking at competing, and his mum was like, "Promise me that Jermaine's not going to do steroids." Promise me. And he was like, I can't promise that, mum. It's not my place. Like, but parents are always going to be like that. And a lot of it is just, understandably, anyone in your life who cares about you is going to worry about you. Like, of course they are. They're going to worry about, like, is this the best thing for you? But at the end of the day, you've just got to have gone through that thought process, like we said earlier, and know your own heart a little bit and sort of stick to your guns on that.
Makes sense, mate. It does make sense. It's a lot of people, again, if you're not in it, it's very hard to empathize with what this process
Yeah.
requires and entails, and it's hard to sort of put across why this is a good thing for you.
Mm.
Just the process in itself, not even the end goal, not even the result of achieving it, the process. You're doing it because you actually love doing it.
Mm.
It's like, oh, is it worth it? Is doing all that worth it? Well, I'm doing all that to do all that, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason why I fucking do it is because I like doing it. And it's actually what is secondary to that is the payoff. And that's something that you've got to, if you have the mindset for, again, you're gonna fucking survive in this long enough for it to actually pay off. And I think, as you've touched on earlier, it is going to be different to other sports where it's, like people will hit their prime within the younger years, like 18, 20 or whatever, and they can sort of fast track into it like a boxing or football or gymnastics or whatever. In comparison to bodybuilding, because a lot of people on the Olympic stage, they're like mid 30s, even on in a pro natural stage, they are pretty much 30 to mid 30s,
Yeah.
and they've been close to, if not 2 decades, to hit their prime,
Yeah.
you
Mm.
know.
It's
So
crazy. That is crazy to think
Yeah.
about. Isn't it? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So like, how many years has it been for you, Jermaine?
I'm technically, this is my 6th year of proper all in bodybuilding. 6th year. And
Well,
again, to be
done.
clear, guys, not won a show. Been top three, not won a show. And
Yeah.
that's pretty normal. Like
Mm.
that is normal. It's rare that you get like someone who, again, at the end of the day, there can only be one first place, but it's rare that you get someone who out the gate is winning teens, juniors, open, pro. And like no one, it's very rare that you have that meteoric rise unless you are like fucking Ronnie Coleman, right? Like, and even then, Ronnie placed last at his first Olympia, like, so
A
yeah,
few.
yeah.
He
So,
plays like shit for a long time, man.
mm,
Uh, but again, he stuck it around long enough to work out the formula, and well, he's now one of the, if not the best of all time.
yeah,
And yeah, it's you just gotta fucking keep hammering yourself to it, just keep throwing shit at the wall and see what sticks.
yeah, 100%, 100%.
Exactly.
Right. Do we should we give some closing thoughts, guys? I think this has been a super cool podcast. Super fucking cool podcast. But yeah, any closing thoughts for maybe for those people in their first couple of years of training? I know a lot of that has been for those people. But yeah, if any thoughts, give your thoughts over to the listeners.
Well, Derek.
Well, I think like it's from my background, coming from like a Chinese family, um, like it's gonna be tough at the beginning, like when no one's like really supporting you. Um, try like I feel like it's easier nowadays. Like you get all the internet, you can reach out to all sorts of people. Finding like-minded people, surround yourself with those kind of people, as makes the beginning so much easier and so much more enjoyable. And then just keep on pushing, keep grinding.
Real shit, real
Yeah.
shit. Jack.
Mm. Yeah, I feel like absolutely. Well, what Derek's saying is true. You know, you just find your people, and that will come from doing what you're doing consistently and being true to that, and you will inevitably find your people, and just again fall in love with the process. There's a lot of young guys. They will see the 0.01% of people within bodybuilding who are still like the 1% of the population who rise quickly, such as your Chris Bumstead, such as your Nick Walker, and they will go, I want to turn pro within a couple of years. Like, I've had clients say this to me. I've had, like 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds to say, I want to be pro by 20, 21, 22. And I'm like, I mean, you know, that would be ideal. Again, it's not like other sports where potentially that may be possible. Unless you've got great genetics, um, it's going to be unlikely. But I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying if you don't get it in 5 years' time, are you still going to want it? What about in 10? Are you still going to want it? Are you going to want it the same? The more you go into this, the more you actually have to give yourself to it because it gets more extreme. You have to find new ways to adapt. Are you prepared to do that? So not only are you going to have to keep the passion, but you're going to have to apply more heat in some scenarios, you know? Are you going to be able to constantly evolve that? Like, you've got to think the long term with this. This is a long-term game. And to touch on pretty much everything that we about in one sort of conclusion, it's the crossover to that. When you think about thinking strategically about the long term, how you're going to play out your bodybuilding goal and your ambitions within this sport, the crossover in life is fantastic because when you want to be successful in any endeavor, as Jermaine touched on, whether it be academically or with business or whatever, it is going to require you to think long term.
Mm.
And this is what really epitomizes a long-term gratification over short-term, just, you know, some cheap short-term joy, like a quick fix. Bodybuilding's not for you. If that's in your nature, if you're just after a quick fix, bodybuilding will beat the shit out of you. It will beat that. You know, you're not made for this. If you keep doing it though, bodybuilding will beat that out of you, and then you will then become a sucker for the long-term gratification, which then will enable you to be a better person, a more successful person. So you've just got to be prepared to bleed for this, without the certainty that it will actually pay off. Because in retrospect, it's easy to connect the dots and make sense of how these dots connected and how the eventually contributed to how where you are now. But to be able to estimate how the dots are going to connect is near impossible. And there's got to be an element of blind faith that one, you're able to sustain what you need to do, and also that it will work out in the end.
Mm.
And what makes it more comfortable to be able to go through that is finding joy within the monotony of the process. That's my closing statement.
That what a
Well said. Well said.
well said, bro. For me, I'll keep it short and simple. If it's not fun, it's not worth doing. Make sure you're having fun. As soon as you're
Yeah,
not having fun, what's the fucking point? Because,
exactly.
like Jack says, you just don't know if you're going to get that overarching goal. I'm sure the payoff will be super sweet if you do the long term payoff. But if you're not trying to engage and enjoy the day to day, what's the point? What is the point? All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening and watching the SwoleMates podcast. Thank you, Jack, for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Lovely to have you.
Yeah, it's been good. And yeah, looking forward to the next episode where I think in the time we've been on, I've set up we're going to have Phil Samakis on to talk about the new Ultraflex gym in Athens, which will be super, super cool. So stay tuned for that. All right, folks. See you guys next time.
Yeah, later.
Yeah.